The hyperspace countdown echoed through the starship Meridian like a heartbeat. T-minus 47 minutes to jump. Captain Thyrix's 6 eyes dilated simultaneously, all of them fixed on the empty nursery pod where his twin cubs should have been secured for the jump. The safety restraints hung loose. The tiny indentations in the cushions were still warm, but Pixel and Nebula were gone. His ultrasonic shriek ripped through the bridge. Humans couldn't hear it, but every alien crew member felt it in their bones. My cubs are gone. 400 souls were aboard the Meridian, and they were about to attempt one of the most dangerous hyperspace jumps in the sector, straight through the Kepler Anomaly. The stellar alignment that would allow safe passage only happened once every 3 months. If they missed this window, they'd be stranded in deep space. And the captain's 8-month-old cubs had vanished. First Officer Clax's tentacles immediately interfaced with the ship's security system. Initiating silent alert, Captain. We can't panic the passengers. Find them. Thyrix's chromatophores flashed emergency patterns across his skin, colors shifting from purple to red to orange in waves of parental terror. They can't have gone far. Security Chief Zara deployed her teams with military efficiency. Search pattern alpha. Every room, every closet, every ventilation shaft. Bioscanners on maximum sensitivity. The reports came back with depressing regularity. Engineering section clear, no cubs. Medical bay clear, no cubs. Passenger quarters clear, no cubs. Recreation deck clear, no cubs. Meanwhile, at the co-pilot station tucked into a corner of the bridge, Sam Hawkins sat in his own little world. His grandfather's vintage NASA helmet rested on the desk beside him, a family heirloom from Earth's first generation of astronauts. Most of the crew thought it was weird that he brought it on every flight, but Sam had his reasons. It was his good luck charm, his meditation aid, and his connection to home all rolled into one battered piece of ancient technology. Before every jump, he'd rest his hand on it, rocking it gently while he ran through calculations. The motion helped him think. He was doing that now, completely absorbed in the navigation matrices, unaware of the crisis unfolding around him. The Kepler Anomaly required precise calculations. 1 decimal point off and they'd emerge inside a star or scattered across 3 light-years. Inside the helmet, invisible from his angle, 2 tiny forms floated in the zero-gravity microenvironment. Pixel and Nebula had their tentacles wrapped around each other, purring at a frequency that matched the ship's engine hum perfectly. They'd discovered weeks ago that Sam's helmet was the only place on the entire ship where they could escape the ultrasonic noise that made their heads hurt. Systems nominal, Sam murmured to himself, not realizing he was reporting on more than just the navigation computer. The security sweep continued. Every logical place a pair of cubs could hide was checked and double-checked. But nobody thought to check the co-pilot station. Sam Hawkins was known for being a bit odd. He talked to himself, kept weird Earth artifacts around, and had this strange meditation ritual that everyone just accepted as human weirdness. Thermal anomaly at the co-pilot station, one of the security officers noted, looking at his scanner. That's just Hawkins, Chief Zara dismissed. Humans run hot. Keep searching. The countdown continued, T-minus 35 minutes to jump. Captain Thyrix was trying to maintain his composure, but every parent in the galaxy knew that feeling, the cold terror that something had happened to your child. His 6 eyes kept scanning the bridge, looking for any place 2 cubs could hide. Captain, Clax said gently, we need you focused for the jump. I can't jump without knowing they're safe. Sir, we've checked everywhere logical. Then check the illogical places. Sam continued his calculations, absently rocking the helmet. Inside, Nebula made a tiny sound of contentment. The rocking motion was soothing, like being back in their mother's pouch before they were born. Pixel tightened his grip on his sister, keeping them both centered in the zero-gravity field that Sam had unknowingly created when he'd modified the helmet's interior for better meditation comfort. The search teams were getting desperate now. They'd checked the cargo holds, the maintenance tubes, even the captain's private quarters. Nothing. T-minus 30 minutes to jump. This was the critical point. They needed to begin the final jump preparation now or abort the whole thing. 3 months waiting for another window. 3 months of expensive supplies. 3 months of passengers angry about the delay. But Thyrix couldn't think about any of that. His babies were missing. Sam finally looked up from his calculations to stretch his neck. As he did, he reached for his helmet to adjust its position, and that's when he saw them. 2 sets of iridescent eyes blinked up at him from inside the helmet. Tiny tentacles gripped the interior padding that he'd installed last month, for comfort. And a small voice, Pixel's voice, whispered, "Shh, Sam friend. It's quiet time." Sam's training kicked in immediately. 20 years of flying through space had taught him not to panic no matter how weird things got. And things got pretty weird in space. But finding the captain's missing cubs in his meditation helmet? That was a new one. "Hey there, little ones," he said softly, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "What are you doing in there?" "Sam friend quiet," Nebula explained in broken standard, the universal trade language. "Ship loud for cubs. Hurts here." She touched one of her tiny auditory organs. Sam's mind raced. Of course, he'd read about this in xenobiology. Young Altairians were incredibly sensitive to ultrasonic frequencies. The ship was full of equipment from dozens of different species, all operating at different frequencies. To adults it was just background noise. To cubs with developing nervous systems, it must be agony. His helmet, with its primitive earth padding and analog systems, created a perfect soundproof bubble. No ultrasonics. No overlapping frequencies. Just blessed quiet. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked, though he was already starting to piece it together. "Many sleep times," Pixel said. Sam friend never angry. Always gentle. Memories clicked into place. Those times he'd found his snacks mysteriously eaten. The feeling of being watched during his meditation. The way his helmet sometimes seemed warmer than it should be. They'd been visiting him for weeks and he'd never noticed. T-28 minutes to jump. Sam had a decision to make. Protocol demanded he report the cubs immediately. Their location could affect jump calculations. Moving them would certainly cause distress, maybe even panic during the jump. But looking at them floating peacefully in his helmet, their little bodies finally relaxed for probably the first time in months, he made a different choice. He carefully lifted the helmet and placed it in the emergency crash webbing beside his station, the safest spot on the bridge during a jump. Then he tapped his communicator. "Captain Thyrix, this is Hawkins. I have your cubs. They're safe. And we're jumping in T-25. The captain materialized at his station so fast Sam wondered if Altairians had secretly developed teleportation. "You took them?" Thyrix's chromatophores were flashing threat patterns, colors Sam had only seen in military training videos. "They came to me, Captain. Your cubs are in pain." Sam turned his tablet toward Thyrix, showing the ultrasonic readings he'd been unconsciously collecting for weeks. The Nursery Pod was a convergence point for 3 different species equipment frequencies. For adult Altairians it would be uncomfortable. For cubs it was torture. Thyrix's colors shifted from angry red to a deep blue-green that Sam had never seen before. Later he'd learn it was the color of shame. "I didn't know," the captain whispered. "None of us did," Sam said. "They found the only quiet place on the ship." He gestured to the helmet where Pixel and Nebula were now peeking out, watching their father with worried eyes. "Papa okay?" Nebula asked. Thyrix moved closer, his parental instincts warring with his captain's training. The cubs were peaceful. For the first time before a jump, they weren't showing signs of stress. Their vital signs displayed on Sam's medical scanner were perfect. "The helmet blocks the ultrasonic overlap," Sam explained. "And look at this," he pulled up a schematic of the ship. "The co-pilot station is at the ship's center of mass. During a jump, this is actually the most stable point. They're safer here than in the Nursery Pod." Bridge crew were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Some were demanding the cubs be returned to proper containment. Others were staring in amazement at how calm the cubs were. First Officer Clax noted something remarkable. "Captain, they're not showing pre-jump stress. This is the first time on record for Altairian young. T-20 minutes to jump." Thyrix looked at his cubs, then at Sam, then at the countdown timer. The entire bridge held its breath. "If anything happens to them, I'll protect them with my life," Sam said simply. There was a long pause. The fate of the jump, the cubs, maybe even human-Altairian relations hung in the balance. "They stay," Thyrix decided. "Make the jump." The bridge erupted in shocked whispers. The captain was trusting a human with his heirs during one of the most dangerous jumps they'd ever attempted. Sam just nodded and got back to work. One hand continued the navigation calculations while the other steadied the helmet. Inside, the cubs had curled up together again, purring in harmony with the jump drive's warming cycle. T-minus 10 minutes to jump. All stations report ready, Clax announced, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Engineering ready. Medical ready. Navigation ready, Sam added, then quietly, Cubs ready too. The final countdown began. Throughout the ship, passengers and crew secured themselves for the jump. In the nursery pod, other young beings were crying, their parents trying desperately to calm them. But in Sam's helmet, Pixel and Nebula were playing a quiet game with their tentacles, completely relaxed. T-minus 5 minutes. Captain Thyrix took his command chair, but his 6 eyes never left the helmet. T-minus 1 minute. Sam made a final adjustment to their trajectory, accounting for the tiny additional mass at his station. The cubs seemed to sense something important was happening and went very still. T-minus 10 seconds. The jump drive's hum filled the ship. 5, 4, 3, 1, jumping. Reality twisted. Colors that didn't exist flashed past the viewports. The ship stretched and compressed simultaneously. Most beings experienced jump as a moment of intense disorientation, sometimes panic. Sam held the helmet steady, humming an old Earth lullaby his grandmother used to sing. The cubs' purring synchronized with his humming, creating a strange harmony that seemed to smooth the jump itself. And then it was over. Jump complete, Clax announced. We're through the Kepler Anomaly. Perfect navigation. The bridge erupted in cheers, but all eyes turned to the helmet. Pixel and Nebula floated out, giggling. They were actually playing, right after a hyperspace jump. Every parent on the bridge stared in amazement. Medical Officer Tren ran a scanner over them. 0 stress hormones. I've never seen anything like it. Captain, your cubs just made the smoothest jump on record. Word spread through the ship like wildfire. Within an hour, parents were bringing their young to see the miracle cubs, who had jumped without trauma. Sam found himself explaining his discovery over and over, how human technology, primitive as it was, didn't interfere with alien nervous systems. Your analog systems don't create ultrasonic overlap, the ship's chief scientist marveled. It's so simple we never thought of it. Over the next few days, Sam worked with the engineering team to create quiet zones throughout the ship. Using basic human materials, foam padding, analog dampeners, even simple blankets, they carved out spaces where young beings could escape the sensory assault of modern technology. The transformation was immediate. Young crew members who had been listless and anxious became energetic and playful. Parents reported better sleep, better appetite, faster learning. Captain Thyrix officially appointed Sam as the ship's first youth navigation specialist, a title that made Sam laugh. I just have a comfortable helmet, he protested. You have empathy, Thyrix corrected. You unconsciously created a sanctuary because some part of you recognized suffering, even if you didn't consciously know it. The cubs, meanwhile, had become Sam's constant shadows. They'd claimed a corner of his station as their official quiet spot, though they still loved the helmet best. 3 jumps later, Sam's quiet zones had been implemented throughout the ship. The transformation was remarkable. The Meridian went from having one of the worst youth health records in the fleet to the best. But the real test came when they faced their next challenge: navigating the asteroid fields of Kepler 442 during a solar flare. Traditional navigation would be almost impossible. The radiation would scramble their instruments. We need organic navigation, Thyrix announced at the briefing. Feeling our way through. Pixel, who had been sitting in Sam's lap, raised a tentacle. Use the quiet network. Everyone turned to look at the cub. What do you mean, little one? Sam asked. Put calm younglings throughout ship. We feel things instruments can't. Like how we found you, we felt the quiet calling. It was brilliant. The young beings, in their quiet zones, could act as living sensors, their heightened sensitivity actually an advantage for once. Sam and Thyrix looked at each other. Could they really trust navigation to children? My cubs trust you, Thyrix said. I trust them. Let's do it. The preparation took days. Sam and Thyrix had to learn to truly co-navigate, merging human intuition with Altairian precision. The cubs positioned themselves in the helmet between them, acting as translators between 2 very different ways of thinking. Young beings were stationed throughout the ship, each in their own quiet zone, connected through a network of simple communicators. Their parents stood by, nervous but trusting. Entering asteroid field in T-5 minutes, Clax announced. Sam could feel the tension on the bridge. This was unprecedented. They were trusting their lives to human primitive technology, alien children, and a navigation method that had never been tested. Everyone ready? Sam asked through the network. A chorus of young voices responded, including Pixel and Nebula's enthusiastic, "Ready, Sam friend." They entered the field. Immediately, the traditional instruments went haywire. The solar radiation was overwhelming every sensor they had. But the younglings felt the asteroids. Each one reported tiny sensations, pressure changes, temperature variations, gravitational shifts, that Sam translated into navigation adjustments. Large mass bearing 270, a young crystalline reported. Confirmed, Sam said, adjusting course. Thyrix, calculate optimal pathway. Adjusting for gravitational variance, Thyrix responded, his 6 eyes processing data faster than any computer. The cubs in the helmet were the crucial link, translating Sam's intuitive leaps into mathematical concepts Thyrix could use and vice versa. They danced through the asteroid field like it was a choreographed performance. Where traditional navigation would have them stopping and starting, scanning and rescanning, they flowed continuously forward. Exit point approaching, Clax announced, amazement clear in his voice. They emerged from the field without a single impact. The bridge was silent for a moment, then erupted in celebration. How? The fleet admiral asked over the communication channel, having watched the entire thing. We stopped trying to overpower space, Sam explained, the cubs nodding along. We started listening to it instead. Within a week, the Hawkins-Thyrix method was being implemented across the fleet. Ships reported dramatic improvements, not just in navigation but in crew morale, youth development, and even fuel efficiency. Com crews made better decisions. 6 months later, Sam stood in the newly constructed Quiet Navigation Academy on Station Prime. The cubs, now adolescents but still small enough to both squeeze into the helmet when they wanted to, were his teaching assistants. The universe isn't silent, he told his multi-species class. We just couldn't hear it over our own noise. He demonstrated with the helmet, now replicated in various sizes for different species. Each young being got to experience true quiet, many for the first time in their lives. Parents were taking classes too, learning to recognize the signs of sensory overload in their young. The change was revolutionary. Species that had barely tolerated each other were working together, united by the universal desire to protect their children. The biggest test came with the Grand Fleet jump, 5,000 vessels attempting simultaneous hyperspace entry. It was the largest coordinated jump in galactic history. Sam, Thyrix, and the cubs were on the flagship, coordinating the youth network across all ships. Every vessel had quiet zones. Every young being was at their station, calm and ready. This is Admiral Core. Begin jump countdown. 5,000 ships. Hundreds of thousands of lives. All trusting in a navigation method discovered by accident when 2 cubs hid in a human's helmet. T-60 seconds. Sam looked at Pixel and Nebula. They'd grown so much, but they still had that same trust, that same innocence that had led them to him in the first place. Ready, little ones? Ready, Sam father, they said together. The title made his heart squeeze. Somewhere along the way he'd stopped being just the quiet human and had become family. T-10 seconds. Across the fleet, young beings settled into their quiet spaces. Parents held their breath. The entire galaxy seemed to pause. Jump. 5,000 ships entered hyperspace simultaneously. In the past, they would have expected at least a dozen casualties, ships lost in translation, emerged in wrong locations or worse. This time, 0 casualties. Perfect coordination. The smoothest fleet jump in recorded history. The cubs had grown too big to both fit comfortably in the helmet, but they tried anyway, their tentacles tangled together as they celebrated. We did it. Nebula cheered. The whole galaxy did it, Sam corrected. We just showed them how to be quiet enough to work together. Captain Thyrix joined them at the station, his chromatophores showing the purple gold of deep satisfaction. My cubs found their human, he said, and changed everything. They didn't find me, Sam said, watching the stars streak past. They found the quiet. I just happened to be keeping it safe. That evening, they gathered in the navigation nest, the quiet zone that had become the social heart of the ship. Sam's original helmet sat in a place of honor, with a small plaque beneath it, where silence spoke louder than engines. Pixel was presenting his latest research to the gathered families. Emotional navigation, using young beings' emotional sensitivity to detect phenomena invisible to instruments. He'd already discovered 3 new types of stellar phenomena that instruments couldn't detect but young navigators could feel. The implications were staggering. "We're not just navigating space anymore," Nebula added. "We're navigating the connections between all living things." A message arrived from Earth. Sam's home planet was adopting Altairian navigation techniques in exchange for quiet zone technology. It was the first true technological exchange between the species, each offering what the other needed. "Remember when you both fit easily in the helmet?" Sam asked the cubs, who were now almost as tall as his waist. "We still fit when we need to," Pixel said, demonstrating by squeezing himself into the helmet, though his tentacles stuck out comically. "There's always room in the quiet places," Nebula added, trying to squeeze in with her brother. "They expand for those who need them." The Admiral's voice came over the communication system. "Attention all vessels. Thanks to the quiet navigation protocol, this fleet jump had 0 casualties, 0 navigation errors, and exceeded efficiency projections by 300%. The galaxy owes a debt to co-pilot Hawkins and the cubs who had the wisdom to seek silence." But for Sam, sitting with his adopted family watching the stars through the viewport, the statistics didn't matter as much as the simple truth the cubs had taught him. Sometimes the most advanced technology in the universe is knowing when to be quiet. Later that night, as the ship settled into its sleep cycle, Sam found the cubs in his quarters. They'd managed to both squeeze into the helmet again, though they really didn't fit anymore. "Comfortable?" he asked. "Perfect," they said together, even though Pixel's head was squished against Nebula's shoulder and their tentacles were tangled in a knot. "You know you have your own quarters now. Beautiful, spacious, quiet quarters." "We know," Nebula said. "But sometimes we need to remember." "Remember what?" "That feeling safe doesn't require much space," Pixel explained. "Just the right space." Sam understood. The helmet wasn't just a hiding spot anymore. It was a symbol, a reminder of where everything started, with 2 scared cubs seeking quiet and finding family. A new alert came through, another ship requesting quiet zone consultation. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, more young beings discovering what silence sounded like for the first time. But tonight, Sam sat with his cubs, too big for the helmet but trying anyway, and thought about how the most important discoveries weren't the ones you looked for. They were the ones that found you when you were quiet enough to notice them. "Tell us again," Nebula said, though she knew the story by heart. "Tell us about the day we found you." "You mean the day I found you?" Sam teased. "No," Pixel said firmly. "We found you. You were alone and didn't even know it. We were in pain and didn't have words for it. We found each other." So Sam told the story again, about the countdown and the search, about the helmet and the quiet, about the jump that changed everything. The cubs knew every word but listened like it was the first time. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, and the ship sailed through the cosmos on currents of dark matter and mathematics. But inside, in the quiet spaces they'd created, families of all species were learning the lesson 2 cubs had taught them. That sometimes the most important thing in the universe isn't the destination or the journey. Sometimes it's just having a quiet place to rest along the way. Years would pass. The cubs would grow to full size, become famous navigators in their own right. Sam would age, his hair growing gray, his movements slower. The helmet would be moved to a museum, displayed as the artifact that revolutionized space travel. But every time they jumped, no matter how far apart they were, Sam and the cubs would think of each other. And in that moment of space-time distortion, when reality bent and twisted, they'd remember the perfect quiet of a helmet floating between the stars, where 2 scared younglings found a lonely human, and together they found home. The Galactic Navigation Archives would record it all: the technical specifications, the success rates, the revolutionary changes to fleet protocol. But they couldn't capture the most important part: the feeling of small tentacles gripping worn padding, the sound of purring matching engine harmonics, the weight of trust placed in someone who didn't even know he was trustworthy. That was the real revolution. Not the technology or the techniques, but the simple truth that every being, no matter how small or scared, deserved a quiet place to feel safe.